But it's better to remain silent and be thought of bold than to speak and to remove all doubt. 45 confirmed the validity of that ancient adage when he sounded off on a meltdown Wednesday about his decision to remove U.S. troops from northern Syria. The day began with an Oval Office news conference with Italy's president. The Kurds are protected, 45 proclaimed, even as Kurds are fleeing for their lives from the Turkish onslaught. And by the way, there are no angels, he added, before repeating his false assertion that the Kurds are deliberately releasing Islamic State prisoners to make Americans think, oh gee, we got to get right back in there. This is Turkish propaganda with no basis in reality. Reports suggest that Islamic State prisoners are actually being released by Turkish proxy forces but haven't already betrayed the Kurds. 45 feels no compunction about cruelly maligning them. That about 11,000 Kurds gave their lives in battle to defeat the Islamic State means nothing to this Solipsistic commander-in-chief for whom duty, honor, and sacrifice are alien concepts. 45 expressed utter indifference about the Turkish offensive into northern Syria and the Kurdish call for help from a genocidal Syrian regime allied with Iran and Russia. If Turkey goes into Syria, that's between Turkey and Syria, he said, and if Russia wants to get involved in Syria, that's really up to them. It's not our border. In reality, the United States has a major stake in northern Syria. Our troops went there to fight the Islamic State, and now they have been hastily removed, just as that terrorist group shows signs of reviving. 45's about the Turkish onslaught is, of course, at odds with the administration's demand that Turkey declare an immediate ceasefire. How can 45's aides demand a ceasefire while the squatter says he doesn't care if the fighting goes on? This makes about as much sense as 45 imposing sanctions to punish Turkey for doing what he gave it permission to do. But it's a fool's errand to look for coherence or logic in what 45 says. He declared the situation in northern Syria to be strategically brilliant, even though a majority of the House Republicans just voted to condemn his incomprehensible decision to give Turkey a green light for aggression. He said our soldiers were totally safe even as they were retreating so hurriedly that they called in airstrikes to destroy their own headquarters before it could be seized by the Turks and their brutal militia allies. The humiliation suffered by the United States was clear to the world as Russian mercenaries apparently took possession of a U.S. military base. The United States enemies are advancing, but 45 seems to think this is all a big game. It's a lot of sand, he said. They've got a lot of sand over there, so there's a lot of sand that they can play with. What a stupid fucking comment. The same military school mindset was evident in the subliterate letter that 45 wrote to Turkish President Erdogan. Don't be a tough guy, don't be a fool, he told Erdogan. I will call you later. We've had the Monroe Doctrine, the Truman Doctrine, and the Reagan Doctrine. This is the Mr. T Doctrine. After the tough guy actor whose refrain was, I pity the fool. Shockingly enough, 45's gambit failed. Erdogan repeatedly threw away 45's letter. The Turkish offensive continues. The Turkish strongman is showing himself to be the true bully on the block. 45 is only a pathetic pretender. But in President Walter Mitty's mind, he is not the lounge lizard who claimed bones first to avoid service in Vietnam. He is a mighty conqueror who all by himself captured the Islamic State in 1 month or so, he told Democratic leaders while he trashed former Defense Secretary Jim Mattis, who's a genuine war hero, as the world's most overrated general. This was part of a meltdown by the squatter that also included attacking White House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. As a third-grade politician to her face, 45 enraged in his usual projection when he posted a picture of Pelosi literally standing up to him, calling it nervous Nancy's unhinged meltdown. The only person who had a fucking meltdown was 45. I think now we have to pray for his health. Pelosi stable and also unstoppable. Did no one in the White House have the nerve to tell him not to send his Puri letter to Erdogan? Evidently not, just as no one had the nerve to tell him not to pressure Ukraine to intervene in the U.S. election. 45's increasingly batty behavior, triggered by the imminence of impeachment, makes it all the more imperative to impeach and remove him. But while Republicans are willing to rebuke him over Syria, they refuse to repudiate this farcical squadroncy, so the 45 show will go on wider and weirder than ever, even as the majority of the public demands that he leave the stage now, and I agree.